with it being after 7:30, I'll call the September meeting to order. And I would like to stand and have a moment of silence for the heroes of 9/11. And we'll start with a moment of silence. Okay, and we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And there are no minutes, so we are going to start off with request to continue for certificate of compliance for 242-1671, 2302 Turnpike Street.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that's unanimous. And the next one is 242-1428 Turnpike Street, Lot 4 and A. Request to continue to October 9th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. And there's an RDA, 268 Raleigh Tavern, request to continue to 9/25.
So moved. Oh,
No?
Today is 9:25. Oh, no.
No, it isn't.
today's not.
Oh, I'm sorry, Raleigh Tavern. Sorry, you skipped.
That's all right.
Okay, Raleigh.
No
Tavern.
more drinking
You're right.
before the meeting.
Okay.
He said purely in jest.
Of course, in jest.
Okay. Yes.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Okay, first order of business is 93 Winter Green Drive.
All right, so the commission will recall this project involves an addition within the same footprint of an existing garage above for an in-law suite. Associated deck and stairs are proposed. Previously, the plan called for the footings within the no-build zone. Commission required that they figure out a way to take those out. They are now cantilevering the supports on the house so that we have no direct disturbance from any footings within the 50-foot no-build zone.
Good
Thank
job.
Thank you. Good job. Joe, any questions?
No, good job.
Al?
No questions, sir.
Doug?
Yeah, I got a question as to the, you don't show any knee braces for the porch section that's at the door.
Any knee braces?
You need braces to hold that up. You just got the thing in, either they're going to have to be supported by knee braces or they're going to have to be cantilevered off the joists that are in the ceiling.
Basically, the back deck, we have to reframe the whole first floor. That back deck is cantilevered out. And there are going to be knee braces on the 6-foot deck. I cut it from 8 feet down to 6 feet because 8 feet is just too much to cantilever.
Yeah, but the plans that you've got that here for our approval don't show any knee bracing for that.
Well, I can't.
You're gonna nest the deck joist into the ceiling joists in the garage, on the
Yeah.
floor joist on the second floor, and you're gonna run them inboard.
Right. I have a center bearing beam, and it's going to be 20 feet from the center bearing beam out to the end of the deck. I am not going to scissor them. I'm going to run full 2x10 PT all the way out.
Push them right out, yeah.
Yep, post them right out.
So you're going to do it from the garage? You're
From the
gonna
garage.
cantilever it from the garage rather
From the
than...
framing, that deck becomes an integral part of that whole framing member.
Okay, the plans don't show that or call for it, so...
I understand.
And the plans also have language in it that basically say to the contractor, it's your responsibility, nothing on me. And I just wanted to make sure things are clear, because nothing comes back to the Conservation Commission saying you approved something that isn't going to work.
No, I designed it, it's going to work. He put it on paper, he didn't put it the way I wanted, but I always do it the way it's supposed to be done, so.
More questions?
No, I've raised the point I wanted to raise.
Okay. Al?
So based on Doug's question and the answer from the applicant, do we need a note made to the record drawing to reflect that the way he plans to construct it is not as recorded on the
It's not-
plan? Do we need a note?
It's not indicated on the plan exactly.
So it's
how-
not called out, I get it. So do we need a note on the record drawing?
I think it is called out. I think it's that second note on the far right, second one up, and better yet, is he's not showing any posts coming down to the ground, so you know, clearly there's no disturbance proposed, and he's telling you how he's doing it.
No, there's no disturbance to the ground, I understand that. But he doesn't,
Okay. I'm satisfied we don't need a note.
All right, we need a motion.
So I would recommend a -2 and a -3 with conditions as I spelled out.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. To the fellow commissioners, I've kind of been trying to get Amy to speak a little more, so what I'm going to do is when we call up an applicant's applying, I'm going to have Amy give her recommendations first, then we'll hear from the applicant, and then we'll do accordingly. This way, we get Amy's remarks before,
Sure.
like we did with Jen. And this way we kind of have an idea which way she's heading, and then we can look at where we're heading.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, next order of business is 242-1763,
No, 65.
65, excuse me, 251 and 2053 Salem Street.
So I performed a site inspection this week with, yesterday, with Ranger Engineering representative on site. Made some recommendations to add to the plan. There was a patio that wasn't depicted that was existing. And in my site visit, realized the shed is in the 50-foot no-build. I reviewed the trees that are in the no disturb zone that are slated for removal. Took some pictures. These are the birches, and they have a really heavy lean, and I think it would only be a matter of time before they would snap with the heavy snow. Let's see if we have a picture of that. And the pine tree that's in the no disturb zone is 25 feet from the existing garage. These are terrible pictures. It doesn't seem to be ailing in any way, but it is pretty tall, and I do see the hazard to it, but we don't have a arborist's certification for those trees, but,
So that pine, that's in the no disturb zone?
yeah.
It is,
It
okay.
looks like, usually if it's a hazard, which it appears leaning pretty good.
Which one is it? Is it the
The
bare
first
leaner,
big
or
one.
is it the pine behind it?
It's this one,
I've been right there.
right here.
The pines, if I could, Ben Osgood, the pines behind it are being removed. They're outside of the 25-foot no disturb. Because of the disturbance they did before, it's going to kind of leave this one just in by itself. The purpose of removing the ones behind it are to do a septic system. That's going to be another filing. We just figured come in and get all the tree cutting and establish the limit of work all at once. They'll leave that tree if the commission feels it's, valuable to the wetland resource. I think they're worried that it's going to come down when they clear them to do all their other work. It's going to be left alone, and those pines that have grown in a forest and then they're left alone, they eventually just come down in a windstorm.
So I can't, especially if you take the other pines around it, they usually act in unison together, holding each other up,
Right.
blocking the wind together.
Right.
The one I'm looking at that's in the no disturb, is it leaning and snagged in the other pine that you're taking?
No.
No, it's- all
it's
right.
just standing
It's
by
just the way it
itself.
looks.
It's got
Poison ivy running
a
up the
good
side.
poison ivy vine climbing up.
It does look like it's leaning.
Well, what you just said answers my question. If it's got poison ivy wrapping around it, it's dead in no time. That's what poison ivy does.
Yeah.
So
I'd
I
take
mean,
it
it's,
now.
And take it down based on
Again, we're
that
not,
alone.
not setting a precedent by letting a tree come down to the no disturb. I think it's part of the overall plan. This one is not a,
But it's not gonna survive with the vine on it.
and it's not a,
gonna
it's
survive.
not gonna help the habitat any.
No way that tree survives.
So in this instance, I could see some logic to taking it down.
I agree. No, just a comment, I'm echoing that with poison ivy around that tree, and with the wind barrier behind it being gone, that tree won't, there's no survivability, it doesn't have a chance.
Okay.
The vine will choke it.
I don't have an issue, you know me, and I don't like taking trees down and not disturb. This one, unless it's a safety factor or it's dead, that one looks like it could be a potential safety factor.
It will be dead.
So I don't have an issue taking that tree down. But you're gonna leave the stump, is that right?
Right. Yep.
Right.
Okay. The other question is the illegal shed? You're gonna move
Right.
that?
Yeah, and we did talk about it a little bit today, and maybe I'll let Amy make her
You can
suggestion.
talk about it if you want, but it's gotta go.
yeah, so.
Oh, I know, it's just a matter of the process.
Yeah,
I just
the
like
the
to-
mechanism to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I would recommend just a straight-up enforcement order requiring its removal by a date certain.
Okay, because now is the time to do
Not-
it, because
Let's not
Yep.
wrap this together. It's-
we got the Ryans in the fire.
Right, but they're anxious to get the tree planting done and, move on and just take care of this, and I don't want to have to move the shed before we get an order, either make it a condition of the order by a date certain, or with an enforcement order by a date certain, and we'll make sure it gets done. But they're ready to plant the trees and restore the buffer zone they've disturbed, and I should note, we've taken out of our plan to remove any trees in the 25, except for the pine tree we discussed, and then the birch tree, which,
Yeah, they were.
the birch tree's is leaning down, it's touching the
Almost
ground
touching the ground.
in the driveway, so.
All right, how much time are you gonna need on the enforcement, so we'll have an idea when you're gonna move the shed?
I mean, I would like to say at least 30 days.
You comfortable with 30 days?
It's only because I like Ben, do I actually sit here and contemplate what I'm about to not say, but I'm going to say it anyway. The shed's there, it's, I'm not going to call it illegal, but it's not permitted. Let's leave it at that,
It's
right?
not permitted, it doesn't even have a building permit either.
All right. But it's in
It's in the 50-foot.
It's in the 50, and it's not shown on the plan.
It is on the plan.
It is,
Yes.
is it so small, I'm just not seeing
Way
it?
over to the right, Joe. It's all the way to the right.
Oh, okay, I thought that was off property. That's
No.
on
left-
property, different lot.
Left side, all the way to the left.
Oh, the
All
left.
the way to the left.
Okay,
Upper left. It's on
Oh, that
property.
That one.
I got it.
yeah.
It's not called out.
That's where I was going
Well,
with
it
It
this.
says existing shed.
Existing shed.
We just missed it.
So what's the structure that has?
Where am I seeing that? On the far left? I'm not
sorry.
seeing.
I'm looking at.
Oh, do I have two different sets of
I'm
plans?
looking at an envelope here.
We have revised plans.
Yeah, that's right.
We have revised plans, I'm sorry. I'm awful sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
So it is shown on there.
Yeah, it was shown on the first original plan set as well.
Okay, I have no problem then if we close, but I just want to make sure there's reference in this order that that shed is not permitted,
Right.
that's being, and then the enforcement order is how it gets done.
Right,
All right, I'm okay. I just wasn't seeing it on the plan at all.
okay.
Any questions, Al?
I'm also.
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
I actually have a couple
Go ahead.
of last minute. So, Ben, we have a stone construction entrance right here for proposed septic system location that's out of the buffer and out of the riverfront.
Right, so to do the tree clearing and to do what they want to do up in there, we've shown a stone construction entrance. We're not including the septic system in this filing, we'll come back for that, but that's the reason for the tree clearing. And we just felt that, they want to rehab this house, and we wanted to, that's part of the tree clearing and for the future septic system. And I felt that the tree clearing was sufficient enough, they need an entrance there. And they'll probably remove the stumps out in that area, so they will have some exposed area and trucks coming in and out.
So you plan on submitting a separate application for that work?
For the septic
For the
system,
septic
yes.
system.
Yes. We have to go through and do the test pits and
Okay,
get that approved with the Board
okay, I
of
just want to
Health.
make sure, because it was on the plan.
So that's a good point, Amy.
It
Same,
really
same,
wasn't-
same comment as the last one is, it's shown as proposed septic system. I don't want, not that Ben would ever think this, but I don't want any other contractor to think that since it's shown on the plan, it's permitted.
Right,
Right.
Yeah, just exclude that
Yep.
from the findings.
yep. Okay,
But it is out of Conservation Commission jurisdiction. Access issues may be.
In the
like
future.
In the future, right. So we'll come in for
Right.
the access to
Right.
get back there.
right. Okay. I noticed, well, I counted 18 trees to be removed. Your table says 21. So, I mean, the dots on the plan, I counted.
But we actually have
18.
20 being removed
All right, 20.
in this plan that I just handed
all
you
right.
as a result of the site walk. And I think what it was that birch tree, we show it kind of as one, but it's a clump of about four.
Yeah, okay.
4 little shoots.
Okay.
So that's why we said
All
that.
right. And then we have no disturb zone markers on 2051, but I didn't see any on 2053.
Well, it's hard to put them in the middle of the driveway, for one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a house that was built in 1965.
I mean, they could maybe go along the side, like
I mean-
along here, you know. Because it's.
Right, to Amy's point is that it's not so much along the where the 25 is, but if we're saying that the original driveway, which is pre-existing and permitted, allowed, we should probably put something just off the driveway to the right.
I mean, I don't have a problem putting them along, there's like a little lawn area along the
Yeah.
driveway that's, you know, if we put them 5 or 6 feet off the drive, just
Yeah.
along the edge of the woods, I
Yeah.
don't have a problem with that.
Okay,
That's fine.
okay.
Yeah, because the snow plows are gonna, put them right at the driveway, the snow plows are gonna knock them down anyway.
Right,
Right.
okay. All right. So that can be a condition. That's all I have.
You all set right then? Yeah. All right, need a motion.
To close an issue in 21 days?
Do you have enough information for the order?
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Now, we get,
We need a
You wanna do the
motion for the
enforcement order now,
enforcement
or you
order.
wanna do it-
No, let's do it now.
do it now.
Motion for what?
For an enforcement order
Move
for
the shed.
moving the shed with a date certain.
Within 30
So
days.
do, okay, before we get to, do we care how the shed is removed? Do we want it disassembled, or do we want it rolled out? I mean, do we? what-
They'll just roll it, get it outside the 50.
There's plenty of logs.
Yeah, right.
They have plenty of logs.
The question I'm asking, Ben, is, can it be rolled if we allow that, or is
Yeah, I
it
think
something that's
so.
going to be,
Yep.
okay, we can't do it, we need a modification?
No, it can be rolled.
It can be rolled,
Yeah.
okay.
You can roll anything.
Okay,
Trains
Just
roll.
don't roll it down the hill.
all right. I've seen great plans.
Don't let it get away.
I've seen-
What do you want the flavor of the order to taste like? You want it to be simply move it out of the
50 foot.
50-foot and do you want to,
I mean, they
do you want a
have,
pre-approval proposed location that they roll it to?
But you just want it out of that
I just-
no build zone?
yeah, if they go to the
We just move it.
north,
Yep.
I mean, they've got a nice area here, anywhere
Here's how we're going to do that.
to the north along.
That I move that we issue an enforcement order to remove the shed from within the 50-foot no disturb to an area outside of a 50-foot disturbance area, and that process not involve any ground disturbance in the process of doing that, and that the final location of the shed outside, in its new position outside the 50 be shown on the as-built plan
Okay,
for
yep.
this order.
All right,
You come in for compliance.
Yep.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Next one is 242-1763, 24, 34 Rosemont Drive. I gotta get rid of these last.
This is all set.
I don't know if there's a representative for 34 Rosemont? Oh, yeah. Come on up. All right. So, project engineer couldn't make it this evening. We have the homeowner with us this evening. Proposal involves tree removal and grading to extend the rear yard. Work is kept outside the 50-foot no-build. And the commission had asked for plan revisions that involved specification for seed mix, the proposed fencing to be shown, the swing set to be shown, abutters' names added to the plan, and a cross-section added to the plan through the proposed work area, and to show that the proposed like a landscape wall, will have geotextile fabric on the fill side.
Any questions, Joe?
No questions.
Yeah.
No questions.
The reason why I asked somebody to come here, just in case somebody asks a question,
Understood.
and if there's no answer, then it would be continued and it'd be a big hornet's nest. So that's why I asked
Yeah, not a
the
problem.
engineer or the applicant to be here.
Happy to be here.
Doug, motion?
And just let the record show there's no abutters or public that are looking to comment.
Right.
Right.
Will we close?
Yeah.
Decision in 21 days.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Next one is NACC number 240-505 Sutton Street. He was from a distance.
So the commission will recall approving the delineation of an isolated vegetated wetland that is actually off-site back in 16. Yeah. No, let's see, 828 revised plans. So we have the wetland scientist here this evening and the project engineer. ZBA closed on the project last night. And granted the variance. Planning board, one hearing under your belt with that, or two?
Good evening. My name, for the record, is Scott Cameron with the Moore and Cameron Group.
Dan Martin from LEC Environmental.
Yes, the planning board is next week. We do expect them to vote on the project next
Okay.
week, so that should be closed.
I mean, we'll allow them to provide a presentation, but I would recommend a continuance. I'd like to get on the site. I haven't had a chance to even be on the site, so, and then, you know, if there's anything the planning board requires from their vote, then we would know, so. Okay.
Oh, we do the presentation, and I can ask the questions.
All right, fire, you all set? Amy?
Yeah.
All right, fire away.
So I'll just get us started. We could probably start with just an overall plan just for completion of the existing conditions plan. So Osgood Street is on this side.
I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask if you'd move the easel a little bit, because I do notice there are butters who are trying to crane their necks in the position that we can see it and they can see it.
Can you guys see that? So Osgood Street is along the right-hand side of the page with Sutton along the top. Surrey Lane comes down along the bottom, so there's a residential abutting to the south and the west, and then Sutton Street along the north, and Osgood to the east, and the airport is further to the north, just for orientation for you. As Amy had said, we came in 2016, filed an RDA with you for an off-site isolated vegetated wetland that is down here. You basically, because it was off-site, we weren't granted access to the off-site property. We evaluated it on aerial. We estimated the setback zones, and you guys basically approved the 25, 50, and 100-foot.
If I may, there
Buffer
were
zones.
abutters at that hearing, that,
Several.
many abutters that were questioning the location. How did that get resolved?
Questioning the location of the wetland.
Yeah.
I did not handle that hearing. Richard Kirby in my office did, but my understanding is the commission issued a determination of applicability.
There is, okay, very good.
And my recollection of that is pretty darn good, is that exactly as you had said, is there was no question that there was an off-site wetland, isolated, likely. You were able to perambulate the areas around it to verify that it was isolated and not connected anywhere. And because you were denied entry, you couldn't get a precise
Right.
location of the limits. So conservatively, there were range lines set from your property line when you
Right,
determined where the
exactly.
line was, which is where these offsets came from.
I remember that.
And when Jennifer Hughes was here, she went out, Rich went out with her. The two of them kind of made those took those estimated distances together, so you wouldn't have to rely solely on our estimate of the setbacks, but that Jennifer participated in that as well. So what that resulted in are these lines that you see here of the 25-foot no disturb, 50-foot no build, and the 100-foot buffer zone. It's an isolated wetland, so it's only protectable under your bylaw. So when we filed the notice of intent, we only filed the notice of intent under the bylaw. So there's no real direct, there's no DEP jurisdiction on the site. So that what happens with that is kind of the scope of jurisdiction for the project is fairly limited within the buffer zone. We did include in the application all of the stormwater information. The project is still meeting DEP stormwater management standards. We filed it because of the type of project in full compliance with that. It's gone through peer review by Janet Bernardo of Horsley and Witten. I think she's had
Twice.
two peer review. We've included all that information for you, even though kind of all that stormwater is outside of the buffer zone. We included that because we knew you would want to look at it anyway. And so I think what I'll do is probably just flip to the landscape plan because it shows all of the information. And there's basically a portion of the corners of two of the buildings within the jurisdiction. There's kind of a community center building and a patio in the corner of one of the buildings that is within the jurisdiction. There's a infiltration trench that takes the water off of the outdoor patio. And then there is grading. There's a slope. It's kind of, the site's built up, so there's a slope that grades down. So there is clearing for the grading in the 50 to 100-foot buffer zone. There's no work in the no disturb zone. And then some of the comments that we've received from neighbors and during the planning board process was concerned about screening. So throughout that process, before we came to you, we increased the screening in the buffer. There's a lot of evergreen trees that have been planted. And then the landscape plan that was done by Radner was focusing in on native plants throughout the whole site, not just within the...
The plantings, I mean, I didn't hear you say it, but I think you meant to say, the plantings are not going to be the 25 either. Even
They're
though it's
not,
screened.
no.
Yeah.
But beyond the 25, within the commission's jurisdiction, and beyond that, there is a lot of screening planting and native plantings. You can see how dense it is along here, and it wraps around and then within the parking lot. So that's kind of the project in its nutshell. Scott can explain anything if you have questions, if you want to get into the placement of the buildings or the design of the stormwater management. That's outside the buffer zone, but whatever you guys would like to go through. We're here to...
Yeah, I did have an opportunity to review what was submitted, including the second round of peer review, recognizing that our scope was going to be extremely limited, but also recognizing that the concern there is perched water table, that anything that's captured and tries to get into the ground manifests itself as direct runoff, becomes runoff anyway. So, I was a little skeptical of trying to recharge to the greatest extent practical the site. But on the same token, I see that, the test bits have been done, your analysis has been complete, it's been reviewed twice, questions raised and answered. It's never I mean, from the water quality perspective, trying to infiltrate to the ground is always something we try to promote, but sometimes where ground is already saturated, that may not be the good approach. But the peer review done with the planning board is satisfied with that. And given the limited scope that we have, I focused my review on what's the potential for runoff from this corner in the jurisdiction off-site towards the resource area, and I see that's just the opposite. You're actually regrading the site, pitching things back towards the parking. So what used to shed to the south is no longer, right?
So, we went through this kind of with the Horsley Witten back and forth too. From a stormwater perspective, I think you caught it a little bit, but I suspect this isolated wetland here is supported by local runoff and also probably a higher water table right at that location. What we found in our investigation was that right along the property line here, whether it's over history, the lots were cut, or when they developed this lot initially, they pushed everything back. There's actually a berm that follows that boundary, and they knew right where it was because they cleared. We could see they pushed and developed right up to it. So in the existing condition, 100% of the site, I guess heading in this direction, flows off in a sheet flow manner through grass and some paved areas towards the China Blossom property. And what happens is, and this is something Horsley Witten asked us to look at kind of where does this all go from there, right? So you keep going this way, you get into Lake Chicowit in the reservoir. What's happening now in a 100-year event is all this water is coming through. It's overwhelming the China Blossom parking, which is generating a tremendous amount of runoff by itself. Going past that, hitting Osgood Street, and then overwhelming the Osgood Street drainage system, and then going out to the reservoir. In effect, what we've done with the stormwater design here, and this is what I detailed in the response to Horsley Witten, is we've taken the opportunity of developing. Yes, we're taking something that's happening now, which is a mostly built-out site. The front part of the site is all pavement and buildings, and then you have a large lawn, and then you have some overgrown wooded area. But what we've taken is a site that's really doing nothing for stormwater. There are some catch basins and things that aren't going to take a lot of water. And we're capturing 100% of that through a combination of spreading out the recharge systems across the property. And even back in this area, just picking up runoff from the patio, we're trying to get all that water in the ground, and where it overflows is back out to the Mill drain system here, reducing the peak rate of runoff before it gets there, so we're not going to overwhelm this. But we're taking all this sheet flow that's coming off now and overwhelming Osgood, and we're actually taking that off the Osgood Street system, which is causing, you can see it's causing some issues with the catch basins. It's a Mass DOT issue. But we'll have that underground, so we don't have that situation happening, at least for the role we can play with this property of overwhelming that system. So we're taking some of that burden off on the surface. And the issue is it can't get into the catch basins. That's what it looks like to me. The catch basins don't have capacity enough in Osgood Street to take everything that comes down. So we'll have that down and in the pipe system already instead of coming over land and washing whatever across the Osgood, Osgood Street and China Blossom. It was reviewed. We did go back and forth a little bit with Horsley Witten, but aside from some adjustments and fine tuning, there really wasn't much of a change to our original design as a result of that back and forth.
My summary of what I've seen in the presentation and the review and your presentation about that review is we're not going into the 25 no disturb.
Right.
Within the 50, we're doing only some screen plantings.
And some grading.
In some grading to accommodate that and to actually address the drainage issue. And that whatever was getting to that area is captured and discharged and held back, treated, held back and infiltrated, and then when it doesn't, when the capacity is exceeded, overflows out to Osgood Street.
And again, because the reservoir, we had this on our initial design too, after it's gone through the initial treatment train, which meets the higher standard for treatment, we actually added another scrubbing unit, a hydrodynamic separator, prior to discharge out to the town system. So we're going through all our system, and then we add another scrubber before we we go out to the town system. So the water runoff from this site will be tremendously cleaner in the post-development condition than what's happening now with no controls. And I think it's important to note, too, that we're not increasing or decreasing, we're not changing anything that's happening with this wetland. It's static, because nothing is really going there now, and we're not taking
So
anything.
as isolated as it is, you're not robbing any hydrology
That's
from
right.
it either.
That's right. So we feel with the increase in the vegetation, through this buffer, and you can see it, you're pretty much filling in right up to the 50-foot buffer. That will be a much more thorough vegetated buffer with respect to the, it's acting as a screen too, but it's a multi-tool. It's doing two things for us.
What type of vegetation along that landscape area? Is it good things that need to be maintained and fertilized? And what do you propose? that
Most
we-
of it's natives, but there is like Norway spruce. Its natives are acclimated to this area.
So the idea behind it, again, is multi-purpose, but it's a mix of evergreen and deciduous trees. So you have some oaks, you have existing trees that are in the buffer. We've had Mike Radner, our landscape architect, go out and he's taken a close look at all the trees in there. Some of them aren't doing much. They're struggling to compete with some of the more mature trees. But we're minimizing the cutting back here. A lot of what's happening is a lot of underlying scrub brush, and keeping as many trees as we can, specifically along the border here, but that happens also to be in the buffer zone. And then the infill will be a mix of oaks, maples, elms, for your deciduous trees. And those are in this area and also throughout the property. These are mostly conifers, although there is some infill of deciduous behind it to kind of hit two canopy areas. You get a lower with the evergreen conifer trees, and then you get a little higher with the deciduous. And so that's a mix of this, I believe, blue spruce. He's going to call it white pine, white spruce, white fir, and this is a mix. And that's intended to keep a diversity of the species in there for
And none of
survival.
which requires lots of maintenance
Very
or
minimal,
or
yeah.
any
And there will be,
fertilization.
yeah, and the planning board will surely have an operation and maintenance requirement that if there is any tree, attrition, that they have to replace that.
I'm looking at the August 13th, 2019 response from you, your company, to Horsley Witten. And then I see a second response on August 29th. What I don't see is any resolution. I see comments going back and forth, but I don't see resolution to their questions and your answers.
They did
Is there
resolve that.
further-
I'll get that for you. We might not have had it by the time we sent this out, but
So
I'll...
is it your position that there is resolution? in
Yeah,
this-
it is resolved.
It
Yep.
is resolved?
Yep.
Okay, so I don't have that here.
I don't have it either.
Okay, so,
We'll get that to you. It's probably because we didn't have it at the time we filed it, and we didn't follow up and forward it to you. And
Okay.
you haven't gotten that from the planning board or anyone?
I look forward to
We'll
seeing
get that
that.
to you.
Nothing right now. That's,
I have a couple questions. It's funny that that side of Sutton Street is wet. It just keeps going. The McAvoy Park, the ground table is very high. The opposite side is not high. I mean, I did a test pit opposite the buildings on Old Clock Road. We went 7.5 feet. It was like ice cream gravel, and it was dry. But here, it's very wet. That's one thing. I haven't had the opportunity to read this, but I will. And I'm looking forward to the answers of the questions that Boston wouldn't have. Also, is this project, is it on a force main or is it ground sewer?
It's currently on a force main, but we're converting to a gravity sewer, so we're eliminating that force main from the Knights of Columbus building. And so the only building I believe that will be pumping is the China Blossom will be the last one.
China Blossom is pumping now.
Yeah.
So what the properties on Old Clock Road are pumping also. Where would you tie in? Because it's fairly deep, isn't it?
Yeah, everything goes out to Sutton Street, all the infrastructure, water, sewer, drainage, electric,
Well, there's a dead
communications.
space, you know that, right? There's a dead space between Sutton Street and 125.
Correct.
There's no sewer.
Yes, yeah, we're connecting in about this area. We're proposing a manhole, and so it'll come down the driveway. Actually, they're showing the manholes, and you can see it in the street right here.
Okay.
So we're able to get that by
So
gravity.
you're going up farther Sutton Street.
Yeah, and then it heads in that
It's
direction.
down the hill.
Yes,
Okay.
so it's all by gravity.
That's okay, that's good. Because I don't think that force main can take this amount of sewage with all these apartments. The other question I have, they're not conservation issues, I'm sorry, but I have questions.
We'll accommodate you.
All right, thank you. Is any of the apartments going to be affordable?
No,
No. Okay.
there's a reason for that.
Okay, I'd be interested to hear that.
We started with a site eligibility letter from the state for 40B with 164 units. That would have included 25% affordable. At that point in time, the town had reached out to Sutton Street Redevelopment to see if they would be interested in partnering on a project that would result in the applicant donating land for the senior center. In exchange for that, they reduced the density, effectively taking away the affordable units, but just making 136 units for the project in exchange for donating close to $1 million worth of real estate and pad-ready site for the senior center. So that was
Senior center on this site?
It's
the
next.
senior center. Yeah, it's not part of it. It's not in jurisdiction, but the senior center is proposed right here.
You can see it actually on there a little better, since
Yeah.
it's got the plants on top.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I asked, because I'm not a big fan of 40B. And affordable housing becomes part of the 10% if we get it. So on any of these projects that come forward, I'm going to ask.
But these are rental units, right?
The rental.
So 100% counts
Yeah.
for affordable stock.
Good, that's even better.
That's much better than for
No,
sale.
those are the only questions I have, is that they were on a force main, the nights were, and then to put all this onto that force main would be overbearing, I
Yeah.
would think. And just so you know, it is wet, you've done the test bits, which I will read.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My guess is what we found here is more like a moraine, kind of like a till, and it did have that water table. It was pretty consistent, but between 3 and 4 feet down throughout the whole site. And you could say the topography kind of slips off. If you've been across the street, I haven't looked at the overall geological maps, but it's kind of the area, and as we're getting close to the reservoir, you might have run into some sort of a delta, an outwash area if I'm hearing gravel and sand and material across the street. That's very common as you have a moraine coming down or a till with the gravel kind of overlapping it, and that's where the water would have been flowing, probably towards the reservoir. I can take a look at
Yeah,
it,
'cause
but
it's weird.
not unusual.
It's,
Not unusual.
There's property on Old Clock Road that are not in the watershed.
Mhm.
It seems like you're farther away, and you're in the watershed. It's very strange the way it's contoured.
Yeah, right on the edge of it, right on the edge of
Yeah.
it, but yeah.
Oh, I know. Okay, thank you. All right, so do we have to, you want to
It's got to be continued.
continue?
Yeah, it's got to be.
So you can you wait till?
It's not,
Oh, wait, yeah, we do. We have a bunch of comments, but we also, are we going to be able to continue to 2 meetings? Or do you want to wait till the next meeting?
I mean, as far as we're concerned, we've, pending any comments from this board, we've, technically, we've gone through the rounds ahead of even getting in here, so we don't have much else to,
Planning board hasn't approved you yet?
there'll be Tuesday, I believe is the date of
Tuesday, the
that hearing.
17th, yeah.
Okay. The reason why I'm at,
our administrator hasn't been out to the site yet.
And
Oh,
she has-
right, yeah.
And she has not
We're
been out to the
happy-
site yet.
yeah, and she has been out, and,
I want to see that stormwater resolution.
yeah, I
letter.
would too.
Right.
So, but we have, let's let the abutter ask.
Well, I want to get, I'm trying to stay with September 25th, only because we have a very big agenda. So it would be the next meeting, which would be
October 9th.
October 9th. Would that work for you?
I mean, well, I think we're ready to go. But you guys are a volunteer board. I will rely on your discretion if, we also don't want to be here till midnight on a hearing, so.
All right, well, let's see what the abutter has to say, and then.
We won't be here till midnight no matter what.
No.
It's just not happening.
Really
It happens
great.
more often than you think.
Oh, yeah, I can
I mean, what I could do is have a drafted order of conditions ready for the 9th.
That's assuming,
Same end
that's
result.
assuming that there are no questions that need resolution. You know,
That
that's-
would be great, because then we wouldn't have to make a decision about our client here about this.
No, the
planning.
danger to that is if there's anything that comes up or questions that need to be asked and answered in the interim that are not included in her draft, that defeats the idea. That's all I'm saying.
See what you're
I'm not trying to throw ants on your picnic or anything, but
But you did, right?
All right, let's just hear from the abutter, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Patrick Duffy. My wife and I are the owners of 59 Surrey Drive, which is this property, the one that contains the wetland. Could you do me a favor and put up the picture that shows the elevation lines as well?
Yeah, Brady.
I had a disagreement with the comment about the berm along the edge of the property. If you look at the elevation lines, you can see that if there was a berm, the lines would actually come down and come horizontal toward the edge of the property, but they don't. The elevation lines actually are practically vertical when they hit the edge of the property, which means that water is running off onto my property from 505 Sutton Street.
I'm looking at a 5-foot drop, is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
I'm looking at a 5-foot drop, is that what you're?
Well, there is a 5-foot drop from, if you're looking from left to right, yes, but I'm just saying that there's no berm there. These lines show that there's no berm there that protects the wetland in my property from runoff from this property. So I'd like you to consider that there might be effects from this project to the wetland and to my property. And first of all, one of my questions is, if during construction or afterwards, I'm seeing significant change in the water levels on my property, what do I do? Who do I go to and talk to about that?
Well, you come to us, because part of their presentation was, they stated right here on the record that pre and post would be the same. There would be no net increase or decrease. The pre-construction and post-construction calcs would be the same. So they're making that part of their testimony.
Very good.
So that's part of the record.
Okay.
So if the post-construction calculations change, that comes back to us.
We did that
I
at
think
the,
the abutters question's a fair one, because
Yeah, it is a fair question.
I don't see the berm. So could you explain where the berm is?
It likely comes just off the property. We didn't go into Mr. Duffy's property when we were conducting the survey. We stopped at the line.
So you're not talking about the berm, you're not talking about the fill that you're proposing to grade down towards that, which is in fact a 5-foot drop.
And you can see it a little, it's not a perpendicular contour. It's actually coming in at an angle, the contour, which is, as it's going down, it's indicating water flow away from the lot line. If you look at those, and you can see right where the 25-foot no disturb arrow is pointing, you can see a little bit of a blip, but the berm probably comes into the site a little bit there. Yep, cursor's right on it. And the Horsley Witten review, their reviewers also agreed, and they asked us to actually add a note, you see in the bottom left, existing berm to remain, to ensure that they don't touch that area. We're not proposing to work in it. It's beyond the limit of, you can see the limit of work line is the silt fence and limit of work with the dashed line. Kind of,
So are you saying that the dash line indicates the berm? Is that what you're telling us?
the dashed line that goes across is our limit of work, so we're not touching anything beyond that.
But the exact existing berm to remain points to almost the dotted line. Are they the same?
No, it's further, it's really close to the lot line, just over. You can see evidence of it in the, there's a 168 contour with the 25-foot no disturb arrow pointing right at it. You can see the little blip, which indicates a mound at the lot line. I've been, and I've been on the site extensively too. We've looked at this closely.
So that's actually not only a good point, but it's something that most people would look at that, think of it as a 2-foot contour interval on your topo, but it isn't. It's 1 foot. You're really trying to pick up those minuscule grade changes,
Correct.
which you can't get even in a 1-foot contour interval. So what you're saying is there is a berm in the no disturb area along the edge of the property line thereabouts.
Yep.
That separates the property of the applicants from the abutting properties. And that because you're not changing that, your analysis of what's coming off the patio area, collecting into an 18 by 18 infiltration trench, and that's your impervious piece, all your roofs are discharged to the front.
Front. Yep. on the
Your
correct.
foundation drains, which go around the buildings, also discharge to the fronts.
Correct.
So you're already intercepting some of the groundwater to begin with.
Yes.
And removing it. But what does come off the patio goes into the infiltrator, does get itself into the ground, and then that aspect is what feeds the hydrology to the wetland that's already there. That's how you're keeping the water in there. It's not going to cure anything, it's not going to change anything, it's going
That's
to
the-
just keep it status quo.
That's correct.
we did a similar thing to the middle school field property. They wanted to improve the fields. And we got a commitment from the engineer stating that there will be no water leaving the site that isn't already leaving, so that they can't cause you any more problems than you have now. And if Amy's willing to go and do a site review with Mr. Duffy, and if you're not comfortable with what's going on here, you can show her your concerns.
Yes, I'd like to do that. We're a little late in the year, actually, because the wetland dries up.
We don't need water we don't need water to know it's a wetland.
We're not
Because you
gonna,
can see the level that it's at its peak, and maybe take pictures or something, so you can see if there is
We'll
change.
see it from
over
leaf litter,
time.
we'll be able, yeah.
primarily,
Amy's a good scientist.
what we would want is we'd want Amy to go on site with the information from the applicant to see if it all matches up. As I said, the post-construction can't exceed pre-construction, so you're not gonna get any more or any less than what you're getting now.
Okay.
And it's not just them saying that, it's been reviewed by the planning board's third-party review engineer.
Which I want to see the review.
There's still one piece hanging out there, but it's not a major item, by the way, but it's still one piece that's hanging out there.
Still want to see it.
Right.
yeah.
So there's been 2 iterations of review, and that last piece of it is response that we're awaiting. So it's not just us as a town taking their word for it.
Is that okay with you? Do you mind
And
doing
we're not
that?
saying that the devious,
When you're going out anyway, you were going to go out anyway and take a look. Would you mind stopping by? And
Or Ben, either or.
Yeah, please do.
Oh, yeah.
My concern is mainly because we have a lot of clay under our soil on our property, which means the water does not drain down very easily at all. It stays there for quite some time in the spring, and so any additional effect will be magnified. And, okay, thank you. I have a couple questions, too. Looking at the town bylaw, Chapter 190-5.c, it says that the applicant shall have the burden of proof through a preponderance of credible evidence that the project will not cause adverse impact. And my question is, what does the board consider to be credible evidence?
that's our bylaw, conservation
Yes.
wetlands bylaw?
Yep.
All right, so that would be the stormwater analysis. That was what we would
the
rely on.
document that we're asking them to bring us the final phase, the sign-off, the solution. In other words, they have a document they submitted that I asked if there was any resolution to it. They said there was. We just don't have the resolution here. They're going to submit that. When they submit that, that's the credible proof that you're asking.
That there will not be adverse impact?
That there will not be any increase in the post-construction runoff on your property.
Or at least they've met the burden to prove that at this point in time. And as these folks, and I'm not even going to vote on this because I'm getting late, but as they mentioned, there will be monitoring of stormwater over time, and while it's still open in front of us before they get a certificate of compliance, it's going to be measured to make sure it was no more than it was before. But once it's done in front of us, then, which is a couple of years down the road, we're not that agency anymore to make sure that happens, and it's you and the applicant.
Right?
I see.
And not to continue the conversation, but I think it's important that maybe the message be brought back to the planning board one way or the other. We've seen on a different development further up Osgood Street, that pre-construction condition and the post-construction condition, as inexact a science as it may be, it's a good science, but it's not precise. It doesn't necessarily represent the worst condition. The construction condition can be a heck of a lot worse. So at some point in time, I think the planning board ought to be asking, so during construction, until these facilities are up and running and maintained, what measures are being imposed to certify compliance with our piece of the bylaw? And not just in this one little corner, but really, it's a global question that those impacts can be great during construction. You've got a very heavily developed confined site, and phasing doesn't necessarily work because a multi-phase project up there became a problem, a huge problem.
Anytime they max a site out, anytime an applicant maxes out the site, they're inviting all the failures that are possible.
So you guys all understand that the construction conditions in many instances is the worst. I think on a site like this, it's very much the case. And I think if the planning board doesn't ask it on their own, I think maybe something from this commission to the planning board asks them to look at that very diligently.
Good night. We have a couple, there's some questions here. But I think that if it's all right with you, we continue till October 11th.
October 11th. It's October 9th.
October 9th, excuse me.
October 9th is the date after the September date.
Because we have to review this, we have to review the answers. She has to do site review, we have to make the abutter happy that.
Should we let Mr. Duffy see if he has?
I'm
any-
sorry, you have any
One more
questions?
question, thank
That's okay.
So if you take a look at the buffer zone, you can see there's significant building within the buffer zone. So my question is, looking at the wetland protection regulations, it says that there's a presumption of significance of the buffer zone, and that the developer can rebut this presumption of significance with a clear showing that the buffer zone does not play a role in the protection of the wetland. What kind of clear showing have you received so far? What are you looking for to actually agree that they have given a clear showing that this buffer zone does not play a role in the wetland?
That is almost paraphrased right out of the state law for the Wetlands Protection Act. But where this is an isolated wetland that's only protected under our bylaw, so that provision is strictly to the bylaw in this case. If it weren't that they were proposing any activity within the buffer zone, they wouldn't be here. So the fact that they're here, that's this process, that's exactly what this process flushes out. This whole give and take is satisfaction of that provision. And if they disagreed with where the line was initially when they got the RDA, or if they didn't get an RDA beforehand, and they were now coming in telling us where the line was and we disagreed, they'd have an opportunity to appeal that. So that's how they could rebut it. So that provision you just read is exactly why we're sitting here this evening.
So what have they presented to show that this buffer zone doesn't play a role?
They haven't rebutted that presumption.
Ah,
They
so
haven't,
that's still to come.
they're not rebutting it. They're
No, no,
here.
Yeah, you're exactly right. They're not rebutting it because they don't have to. The presumption is if you're in the resource area, buffer zone, if you stay out of the 25 no disturb and don't disturb anything, and you stay out of the 50 and don't build anything, then you in fact have provided protections that we expect within our buffer zone. So they have met those standards.
Right, so what you might not understand, is there's a number of different buffer zones. Buffer zone is a very generic term. If it's within 100 foot of an isolated wetland, they have to come in front of us. It's now in front of us. But within that 100 feet, there are certain things that they need something called a waiver to get. They want to try to build something within 50 feet. They want to try to disturb something within 25 feet, they need a waiver, and I think that's part of what that.
Oh, okay. I
language
was
is
under the
referring
impression that the 50 to 100 was also,
to. No, they have a right to build.
jurisdictional.
They have a right
It's
to
still
build on it. They just have to meet the burden of proof that we alluded to earlier.
I see.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Duffy.
All right, and this stuff, you're going to meet with Amy Sutton appointment.
Here's my card.
I'm going to give you a call.
Yeah, or you need
So,
to email, and
so,
then we
Mr.
can
Chairman,
schedule it.
at this time, I would move that we continue this project till October 9th for site visit and whatever else is needed.
Comments.
And comments from Horsley Whitman to show resolution of the stormwater system.
Second.
Wait, they had, did you,
Participate in the site visit.
oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll be doing a site visit with you guys.
Yeah.
And I'll be on his property with him. Absolutely, so I'll schedule something with you two.
But, I mean,
Absolutely.
that's a good point. Under the RDA process, there was not an opportunity for the developer
No.
or their representatives to get on other private property. We can't make an abutter do that.
Right,
So if
No,
you're being invited on,
Now you can.
you can,
right.
but that doesn't presume that the abutter invites these folks along.
Oh,
Though they
right.
should, though they
Right.
should. If you've got something to demonstrate, and you just refuse the opportunity to look at it, it's going to be hard for the developer to address it.
Well, look, can I add one quick comment? I would hope that, Mr. Duffy, I would hope that since you're asking us to review this and look at it and have Amy go out to your property, I would hope that you would allow the applicants to be there as well, so they could see and be part of all the discussion, so it becomes part of the record. Thank you very much.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
That's unanimous.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one. is
Just when you thought it was safe to go out.
RDA for,
Try
I missed one.
1600 Osgood.
242-1766, 1600 Osgood Street. And Mr. Howard promised us a quick presentation because the stormwater is pretty extensive.
It's gonna take me longer to set up than it will. Let me get rid
Yeah, you're gonna set up, and we're gonna continue. He has a file he submitted to us that's 33 pages long, and
Yeah, we've seen those before.
we've seen those before. But
Well, yeah, I mean, stormwater,
yeah, so we're gonna.
But it's going to go out, right?
It's gonna go up.
It's going
It's
out
out,
for you.
yeah.
Yeah, so,
yeah, so we have first round, you guys have the first round of peer review comments somewhere on your desks.
is it in this package here?
No, because I didn't get it until late yesterday, so it's, we gave you copies somewhere. Yeah, it's in there somewhere.
I got that package here.
Or the witness.
You said that there's additional.
No, that Jamie put on the desks tonight,
Really? Okay, hold on.
so.
Hold on.
Yes, let me go ahead.
What do you got here?
That was here when they came in.
Didn't I,
This was
did I
what was in
give
the
you?
packet, and that's what came in?
There
Oh, yeah.
there was a whole.
Yeah, here it is, right here.
letter. You
This-
got it? Yes. Yeah.
I got it, you're right. You're right. When you're
I
right,
know,
you're
I
right.
clipped stuff together.
All right, so,
So we have additional comments
okay,
on top of this.
so, Dave, do you really want to comment on this?
I don't have much to say
didn't
right
think so.
now.
I-
Sorry. I need to get out on the site. I
Yeah.
haven't been out yet. I was on vacation last week, so that's why I'm a little behind
Yeah,
the eight
yeah,
ball.
sure. All right, I'll,
That's the additional September 10th comments.
and we'll open up with Mr. Howard and we'll go from there. All set.
Good evening, folks. It's nice to see you again. For the record, my name is Mike Howard from Epsilon Associates. I'm here appearing in front of the commission tonight on behalf of Hillwood Enterprises LP, the applicant in this notice of intent filing. Just a few introductions. With me this evening is Sean O'Brien, Vice President of Development from Hillwood, over to my left. As I think the commission is aware, Hillwood is a Dallas-based development firm that specializes in these types of industrial real estate projects, and Hillwood is the applicant for this project. Attorney John Smolak from Smolak and Vaughn, somewhere is behind me, to my left, as folks know. Nate Kirschner, everybody's moving around on me. Nate is a senior project manager from Langen Engineering. To my right is Tim O'Neill. Tim's a project engineer from Langen Engineering. We've worked close with Tim and Nate and their colleagues on the stormwater management. Also in the audience tonight is Attorney Michael Rosen. Where's Mike? Michael Rosen. Mike is the owner's representative. The owners of the site are 16 Osgood Street LLC in Osgood Landing, and then John Plant from Langen, last but not least, also to my left. I promised Lou, since this was the first hearing, that I will be focused and as efficient with my time as possible. Mr. Chairman, I think if you could afford me 15 or 20 minutes to give an overview of the entire project, that would be great. If you don't want to get into the weeds tonight on some of the details, obviously completely fine. So let me just paint a big picture.
It's got to be reviewed anyways.
Understood. So just a couple of housekeeping items. Amy, here's the proof of mailing.
Oh, all right.
We did receive a DEP file number this evening. Is that on the agenda, Amy? I don't know if it made it yet. It's 242-1766.
Yeah, it's on there.
Thank you, Al. And the DEP had no comments on the notice of intent filing. So again, we have filed a notice of intent in accordance with the State Wetlands Protection Act and North Andover's Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Requires an order of conditions from the commission for certain project activities associated with this that are in the 100-foot buffer zone to resource areas on the property. And again, tonight's presentation is meant to be an overview. Horsley Witten has been retained by the town to provide third-party peer review services. A parallel application has, of course, been filed with the planning board. That process is ongoing. We were fortunate to receive Horsley and Witten's first round of comments on the stormwater report. Was it today? Was it today or
Yes.
last night? So We are, of course, working on responses to those now, and we'll be continuing the hearing to continue to work closely with Horsley Witten on some of the questions that they raised. So as described in the notice of intent that's in front of the commission, the applicant is proposing to construct roughly an 820,000 square foot e-commerce storage warehouse and distribution facility. Related ancillary work with this project includes site preparation and demolition activities, parking lot construction, utility connections, landscaping, buffer zone and resource area plantings and enhancement measures, stormwater improvements, and there's a solar farm component to this too that I'll speak about briefly tonight. As you'll see in some of the plans and graphics in the filing, the vast majority of the site is outside the 100-foot buffer zone, which is good. I'll focus on the buffer zone issues in detail in a bit. So Commission is, of course, very familiar with the property. We've been in front of you many, many times over the years for different filings. I was most recently in front of you on behalf of the property owner a few months ago to close out some order of conditions on the property. There is one open order of conditions that we left open on purpose because it has some carryover stormwater management BMPs, which I'll explain in a second how we propose to close that old order out. Commission did issue an ORAD earlier this year confirming the resource area boundaries on the site as well as the limits of the 100-year floodplain. Joe, as you might recall, there's a pocket of wetlands in the northwest corner that was inaccessible. Those are outside our development footprint. We're not in the buffer zone to that. It's on the backside of the wetlands, so no work is proposed in that corner. You may wonder why Tim's standing there. I asked Tim to help me flip sheets, so I...
Good job, Jim.
So this is an aerial photograph showing the wetland resource areas that were approved by the commission in that ANRAD filing. Southern portion of the site is mostly undeveloped, forested. We've had maintained meadow and upland habitats out there for a long time. But I digress for 1 second. The plan set for this is really big. There's a lot of sheets because it's a big site. So what I tried to make Amy's life a little easier tonight, I sent over the sheets that we're likely to talk from, so maybe you can flip as best you can, Amy, as we go through those.
The aerial in this one, this set?
Yeah, it was in the other, the other, but this is fine. You're good, Amy.
Okay.
This will work fine.
Right.
Okay, so let's see. So before I jump in, let me just hit on the high points. We had an informal pre-filing consultation meeting with your former agent, Jen, before she left, as well as Lou, just to go over the project at a high level and get some sense of the expectation of the commission when this project was finally in front of you with a notice of intent filing. Given the heavy developed existing conditions at that site, at that pre-filing consultation meeting, both Lou and Jen challenged us to take a look at this important project as a unique opportunity to not only redevelop the site in accordance with current rules and regulations and the commission's setbacks, but to also incorporate and search out meaningful opportunities to enhance the existing resource areas that are out there, including the buffer zone, where feasible and within reason. So it was a commitment that Lou asked us and Jen asked us to consider, and we did that. I'm going to summarize what some of those measures are. We heard them and we incorporated their comments into this filing. So let me just summarize the big picture things as you'll evaluate more closely when you review the notice of intent. First, we'll start with the commission's basics. Obviously, no work is proposed in the commission's 25-foot no disturbance zone or 50-foot no build zone, other than some of the resource area improvements that we're talking about, removing pavement, planting those areas. There's a stormwater outfall, one of those locations that would be moved. But the balance of the entire project, aside from those proactive measures, comply with the commission's setback, 25 and 50. More than 11 acres of pavement will be removed from the site and converted to upland native meadows. This is a native meadow seed mix that will be applied to the site after those 11 acres of pavement are removed by the development. We proposed the creation of upland meadow habitat because that's historically what the commission has sought out there. It was one of the few sites in town where we had this large contiguous opportunities to continue to have that type of habitat in North Andover. That was our thinking behind it. That's what was reflected in the old orders of conditions, including the one that's still open now. So that was the thinking behind our restoration plans. Of that 11 acres, a little over 5 acres is riverfront area. That's also comprised of impervious surfaces. We're going to remove 5.3 acres of pavement from the riverfront area. We're going to restore that as well, the native upland meadow seed mix. There is some work in bordering land subject to flooding. Project obviously complies with the BLSF performance standards for flood storage, one-to-one basis, incremental elevation. But with this project, we're actually going to provide an additional 54,000 cubic feet of flood storage when the project is all said and done. So there's a significant net increase in flood storage on the property. Stormwater management. Obviously, the stormwater management system out there is fairly antiquated. It's been there for a very long time. This is a real opportunity to bring the stormwater management system up to current standards, even though it's a redevelopment project, and we're only required to meet certain standards to the maximum extent practicable. We've treated it as if it's not a redevelopment project, okay? So stormwater will be improved from a water quality perspective as a result of this project and how that water reaches the wetland resource areas on the site. So those are just kind of the high-level key points that we factored into our overall design. Tim, which sheet is that? Do you have CS100 up there? Okay. So I'm just going to go through a few sheets as some examples to talk through some things. So the NOI includes a list of major sequencing and construction sequencing milestones, beginning with site demo and prep, and ending with site stabilization and implementation of the restoration plans. Total duration of the project is expected to be on the order of 12 to 18 months from beginning to end. The two existing, and Tim, maybe you can point this out, the two existing buildings and parking areas at the front of the property are going to remain as a result of this project. Those are referred to as buildings 20 and 21. The remainder of the facility will be demolished and redeveloped with the new facility, but those will remain. Tim, if you don't mind putting sheet CE 103 up. And I'm just using this sheet as an example to give you a sense for the type of information that we've included and anticipating the type of questions the commission might add for a project of this nature. So this is one sheet of several sheets. The permit drawings include these sheets that tie sediment and control measures, stockpile locations, temporary drainage facilities, temporary interim site stabilization measures to different phases of construction. Okay, so we have a multi-sheet set in there that goes through each phase, which sediment erosion controls are installed during each phase, where material is stockpiled, where demo will occur in certain locations. So it's an attempt to make you comfortable that we know this is a big project, and we know there's a lot of things to think about. So we went to great effort to put those sheets in for review and discussion by the Conservation Commission. I picked CE 103 just as an example because this is, most of the site is not in the buffer zone, but this is at the back of the property where there are some wetlands. There's a lot to look at right now, but that's just a sense of what we're working on. From a site civil perspective, overall, the site will be raised between 5 and 10 feet. We did incorporate retaining walls into our design. There are varying heights along the western and southern portions of the site. The walls were used in part to avoid work in the commission's no-build and no-disturbance zones, and also to minimize the amount of fill that would be placed in bordering land subject to flooding. The retaining walls along the west end of the site range in height between 10 and 18 feet. The largest of the walls is roughly 20 to 30 feet high along the southern boundary of the site where a proposed parking area will be constructed. That wall and that parking area is well outside the buffer zone. But we incorporated those retaining walls to minimize encroachments into resource areas in your zones. This will be a net fill project. I can assure you that they only use clean, conventional construction for this project. And we expect the commission will work with you in a condition of that nature accordingly. But we did want to reinforce nothing out of the ordinary is proposed for this project. to be conventional kind of construction fill. And again, all the site development work associated with the building and parking lots, it all complies with the commission's 25 and 50-foot buffer zones. No waivers have been requested. Tim, would you mind putting up sheet CU 100? Do you have 100 on that one, Amy, too? Yeah, here you go. Yep, keep going. One more. Up one more. There you go. Oh, down is a nudge. One more, come on. It's so fast. Up one more. That's 101. See the bottom right corner? The one above it is 100. You're almost there. There you go. All right, it's just an overview sheet. So this is utilities. I'll be brief on this. Utility connections include sewer, water, electric, telecommunications. All of these utilities will be installed underground in trenches, minimum depth of 30 inches. The trenches will all be backfilled with clean fill and native backfill material. Most of the utility work, like most of the project, occurs well outside the commission's 100-foot buffer zone. I picked this sheet because there are some connections made in the buffer zone as you approach 125, and that may show up better on sheet CU 101. Can you flip to that one, Tim? Amy, you might scroll down one, too. No, that's the back end of that. That's okay, you can leave that there, too, Amy. So anyway, the utilities are in paved areas in the roadways. No significant issues with that. Like other aspects of the project, the utility work also conforms to the commission's 25-foot and 50-foot buffer zones. All right, so now CU 101 is a good sheet, thank you. And I'm going to also... So this project also includes a solar component. I've included a photo here to my right. As the commission may be aware, there are existing ground-mounted solar arrays at the back end of the site. These are really low-to-the-ground, sled-mounted arrays. There's also existing solar arrays on the roofs at the site of a similar design. All of these solar arrays are obviously going to be repurposed for this project, and they're going to be relocated to the
Finger-like projection up in the northwest corner.
The baseball field.
Try to multitask here. These lower-mounted solar arrays, because they're going to be repurposed, they're going to be in this paved area over here, because they're low to the ground. You can't have vegetation growing up, right? So those will all get relocated to this area. The baseball field is going to include new solar arrays, additional solar arrays, and those will be the more conventional pole-mounted style arrays.
Just a quick clarification.
Of course.
The pavement area where the arrays are going to go, that pavement's coming out and it's going to be...
A chunk of it is, but that section's not.
Okay.
Where they're not, I'll get to that in a second. I'll show you. Yep. And the solar array aspect of the project also complies with the commission's 25-foot and 50-foot buffer zones in all respects. The new solar modules will be installed, as I think Lou said, on the baseball field area, again, mounted on racks. Bottom edge of the panels is set roughly 36 inches above grade, depending on the final angle and alignment. A roughly 10 to 12-foot wide path will be provided between the rows of new panels installed on the field for access and maintenance. There will also be an approximately 18-foot wide gravel access drive installed around the arrays on the field to provide access during construction as well as long-term maintenance. The baseball field area is obviously going to be, needs to be prepped for the solar project, but we're going to continue to keep that pervious. We're going to prep it and seed it with the native meadow seed mix. We're going to allow the grass to come up to a certain height and create that meadow habitat under the panels. Typical grass height will be roughly 8 and 10 inches, and is a proposed maintenance schedule in the notice of intent to keep it as that meadow habitat, but not get too tall so it affects the production of the arrays. Stormwater management, and Mr. Chair, I'll defer to you in this. I was going to turn this over to Tim in a few minutes to walk you through it, but let me summarize it, and then you can decide if that makes sense given your other time commitments tonight. As I mentioned before, even though the project constitutes a redevelopment, the system has been designed to fully comply with Mass DEP stormwater standards as if it were an undeveloped site. Things you'll see in the stormwater report and things that Horsley and Witten are reviewing now include no increase in post-development runoff rates, at least 80% TSS removal. We've maximized groundwater recharge to the maximum extent practicable on this site. And again, we've included things like snow storage locations and things of that on the plan. Tim, can we put up that color-coded BMP map that we worked on? Yes. So we talked about this briefly when I was closing out the last order conditions for the work at the front of the site. There is still one open order of conditions on the site. That's 242-1352. That was issued to the current property owner about 13 years ago, in 2006. And that was a unique order. That order prescribed long-term maintenance of the stormwater facilities on the site. It also included things like maintaining the meadow habitat and all that sort of good stuff. Obviously, the existing stormwater system is being completely rebuilt and reconstructed to meet current standards. So that old order of conditions and that old O&M plan is now moot, and it will be replaced by the new O&M plans that are included in this notice of intent filing. I mentioned earlier that the buildings up front are going to remain. So those are going to be carved out from this larger project. So the current landowner will continue to own that property and maintain the stormwater BMPs associated with that property. The other landowner would be responsible for the balance of the site. So we prepared 2 O&M plans to clearly spell out who's responsible for what. But we didn't end there. We also prepared a graphic, a color-coded graphic, where we highlighted in 2 different colors the BMPs that the landowner for that property was responsible for and the BMPs that the other property owner would be responsible for. So it's a clear color-coded map so there's no confusion about which party is responsible for what. And that goes along with the written O&M text and schedule that Tim prepared.
Do the systems interconnect anywhere, or are they totally isolated?
If you hold that question,
Twice you've done it.
I know I have. I
haven't gotten back to the
I
other
say
one
that
yet.
respectfully. Tim can walk you through the stormwater details and questions like that. But that may be the end of my presentation, Joe, so it might be a good timing. No, it's not. My presentation's not done yet. So we'll circle back. We'll circle back on that one, Joe. So just before I turn this over to Tim to answer Joe's question, just a summary of the resource area impact, which is of course important. As I noted in my opening remarks, impacts are limited to work in bordering land subject to flooding and previously developed and degraded riverfront area. Riverfront area on the site is primarily comprised of pavement. Section 5 of our notice of intent lists each standard for each resource area that we're altering, and we explain how we comply with each standard. Tim, can we go to sheet CG 800, please? So while Tim's pulling that sheet together, this sheet shows an overview of 3 discrete locations on the site, and Tim, maybe you can point these out, where fill will be placed in borderland subject to flooding. The northwest corner, we do northwest? Yep. The mid and the southern floodplain impact areas. Yep. Thank you. These fill areas are currently comprised of pavement in the mid and southern impact areas, or grassed areas in the northwest impact area. Again, we use retaining walls to minimize the amount of fill in this resource area. So to mitigate these impacts, we're proposing to provide compensatory flood storage in 2 locations. And Tim, maybe you can point these out too. We have a northern and a southern compensatory flood storage area. The drawings included with the notice of intent include tables documenting flood storage at each incremental elevation and how we comply with the standards. As I previously noted, there's a net increase of about 54,000 cubic feet of flood storage after the project is built. So substantially more flood storage than what's out there now through the development of the site. Tim, can we go to sheet LP00, please? Or maybe it's LP100, I'm sorry. And again, I'm just using this sheet as an example. It's a little bit hard to see in black and white, but I'll ask Tim to point this out. I talked about the amount of restoration that we're doing. Tim, maybe you can, let's start on the bottom right, this corner here. All of this area here, and this, those are all big areas of existing pavement, most of which is in riverfront area. That pavement's gonna come out, and we're gonna turn it into an upland meadow. Okay? There's a roadway, show that internal roadway, Tim. Yep, that's roadway's coming out. We're not doing any work near there, but we're taking it out. We're gonna make it one big contiguous upland and wet meadow habitat. That's a wetland there as well, to the right of it. Tim, if you don't mind, pointing to the north, the far top left corner. Lou, you asked, or Joe, maybe you asked about, maybe this was your first question. Okay, yeah. That's the portion of the existing pavement that is not necessary to accommodate the existing solar arrays. So all of that pavement is going to come out too and be restored to upland meadow habitat, okay, in that corner of the property. And then there's also areas on the right and other discrete areas throughout the site that will be restored in that manner. Again, the notice of intent does include a maintenance plan. We're proposing to mow them annually in late winter, typically during the month of March. And the grass height will ideally be 8 to 10 inches, similar to existing conditions. Tim, can we look at sheet LP 101, just briefly?
Just to give the pictorial, for the commission who's not familiar with the site, where he's talking about restoration, that's where the end of a where tractor trailer school used to be.
Sure. Oh, thank
That's
you.
where that parking lot is, and that's adjacent where that other area is over behind the ball fields, where all the solar panels are gonna go up in that corner. So just so,
Right.
give them in their mindset where this stuff is gonna go.
Thank you, Lou. Yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out. And then just while we're on that, to Lou's point, this is the tractor trailer here. This is what that looks like now. There's a wetland right here, big wet meadow. All that pavement's coming out. Okay? All that's gonna come out. They're gonna be restored, similar to what you see out here. With regards to the solar, this is what it looks like up in that corner. You have a wetland over here, it's a drainage ditch, wetlands back here. Joe, the back side of this is those wetlands that we didn't flag. All that pavement's coming out. That's also all being restored, okay? And then I just wanted to show you this sheet very briefly, and Tim, I'm going to ask you to point this out too. There are some woody plantings also proposed along the commission's 25-foot no disturbance zone between that linear-shaped wetland and the limits of work associated with the gravel access drive and the solar panels.
Pull up the zoom in.
Yeah. Amy, which sheet are you on there? Oh, that's fine. Yeah, that's good. That's the same sheet that's in front of them on the screen.
Yeah.
That's fine, Amy. That's good.
That's pretty much on 125, correct?
Correct.
Just behind the fence.
Right, and right along your 25-foot no disturbance zone. Other than answering Joe's stormwater question, those were the remarks I wanted to make to the commission tonight, just to give you a sense for what's in the notice of intent and how we approach this project. I'll defer to you, Lou, if you want Tim to spend a few minutes getting into stormwater a bit. We're prepared to do that.
I think the commission should review the peer review first. I think you gave an outstanding presentation, and per the pre-meeting, you were spot on. The only question I had, and Mr. Lynch had the same question, was the stormwater between the two buildings integrated?
Yep.
Because at the time when we had our pre-meeting, you guys were on the fence of what you were going to do with it.
Right, and Tim, I'll ask you to step over here in a second to respond to Joe's question. And what I got out of that meeting, and I'll let Tim answer the technical part of it, but what I got out of that meeting was the genesis of it was the commission didn't want confusion as to who would be responsible for maintaining what, if that's how the design should go.
That's exactly why I
Yeah.
raised the question.
Yeah, and that's why, taking that feedback, that's why we created that color-coded graphic to make it crystal clear as to who's doing what. But more technically, Tim, if you want to respond to Joe's question, and come up to the microphone, Tim, if you would.
Pull up that operations plan again.
And again, my name is Tim O'Neill with Langen Engineering, just in the weeds with all the stormwater design, so happy to walk you through it. The stormwater as a site was analyzed holistically, but in the future will operate completely separately and independently, with the exception of a few conveyance features that run through the site. They're existing today, we're maintaining and pushing water there. So all BMPs per the respective site will operate only for water on those sites. Once water leaves the treated and attenuated features, it'll go into a conveyance channel that runs through the site and is existing today and discharges to the wetlands at the rear of the site. Water from Lot A does not enter BMPs on Lot B, C, or D, and the same is true for the reverse.
So the O&M plan puts a burden on each property owner to periodically maintain and report. And the theory is that if your parking lots are swept and your basins are kept clean, and any specialty BMPs are cleaned out on a regular basis, the thought would be that discharge at the property interface is clean water, and therefore there could never be extension of responsibility upstream to somebody else for
Right, that's
a
correct,
problem
yeah.
on their own side. Excellent.
You have to go before planning, correct?
Yeah, the application has already been filed, the planning board's already held at least one hearing, and it's still undergoing review, and it will be for a little bit.
Right, and we need a third-party review, absolutely.
Did this trigger MEPA? Must have. Didn't trigger because of redevelopment?
Correct, Joe, a lot of it, it's yes.
Did not trigger MEPA. So the review is being done at our level and not at any state executive office level.
It's our expectation that it's not going to trigger a MEPA filing. Because the site is so heavily developed, it doesn't trigger the traditional MEPA thresholds like land disturbance, because the site's already disturbed. So it's nuances like that. But yes, it's our expectation, Joe, that it'll be through local permit.
So we had a prior application that we heard tonight, and I extended a conversation to a different application, and you alluded to it, but we had some problems during construction, and not that this was going to have problems. But sometimes, the pre and post condition is what gets reviewed, and that's what's carefully concluded that there's no impacts post-construction as a post-development as opposed to pre-development. But in large sites with this type of amount of work and the lot coverage, oftentimes the most critical impact is the construction impact.
Understood.
And I would hope that sequencing, in fact, I was pleased, it almost like you anticipated the question, that all those construction erosion controls phase by phase shed some light on those types of conditions.
That was our
The other piece of it is that it's a large site, God love you guys, 18 months is a very ambitious schedule, and I bet you can do it, but that simply tells me that these are going to be rapidly moving phases. They're not going to be long periods between them. Just can't be. So, and that's something that I think we need to have lots of discussion on before we ultimately close, but it looks like you're going in the right direction for sure.
Understood.
Al?
Mike?
Mr. Manzi?
Tim. Real quick. I have the stormwater review, Horsley Witten. I don't see resolution on it on the back. I see a recommendation, and the conclusion is that they recommend that you be required to, you've probably seen it already, right? It's dated September 10th. Horsley Witten recommends the planning board require the applicant to address the concerns as part of the board's review process. There's 3 pages of concerns here. I don't see resolution to it, so I trust that that's going to be resolved.
Of course, yeah, that's Horsley Witten's first review of the submittal. And,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
So my second comment or question, I'm going to talk about fill. And I don't have to explain to you why. I was wondering if you could tell me, if you could quantify how much fill will be brought onto site?
Roughly 30,000 yards of fill.
30,000 yards. So you understand that we learn as we go along. And one of the things we've learned is that there are many different definitions of what people consider as acceptable fill. DEP allows fill that we won't allow, in spite of our best efforts. So one of the things that I'm going to request is that for every yard of fill brought onto the property, a certificate of origin accompanying that load to tell us where it came from, to certify that it's clean, and to have an on-site monitor, monitor that site to ensure compliance with that requirement. I'm not going to wait for an oops to find out that you have 1 million yards of fill buried under retaining wall that's got RCA in it that's poisoning the environment for the next 100 years. Nothing personal, it's just business. I was wondering if you did any pre-construction test pits to get some water sample baselines anywhere on the property.
Do you want to speak to that, Tim or Nate?
For groundwater elevations, we have
Well, you're going to be redirecting water. You talked about a conveyance that's going to be bringing the water, stormwater back to the wetland resource areas at the back of the property,
Correct, yeah.
which is where Mike described the pavement was going to come up and they were going to be expanded. I trust that the reason for that is so you have the capacity to handle the water that you're conveying back. I'm sure that that's the reason for it, and it makes perfect sense to me. But I'd like to know what you're conveying is indeed not damaging the environment back there.
Right.
So that's the reason for the request for the baseline water testing.
Sure. So all the water on site that's being conveyed to the wetlands will run through the entire treatment train
Yep.
to the standards that we discussed. So that will all be taken care of and cleaned.
So
Any-
pre-treatment, I just want to know what's in it. I want to know what pH, I want to know the pH levels of the water before you treat it.
Okay, yeah, we'd have to look into that to actually get the actual baseline readings of.
Yeah, if you're going to convey the water and you're going to send it to the resource area, I want to know that it's within acceptable pH levels.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Are you just talking about, are you talking about just pH, or are you talking about, are you talking 21E? I'm
No,
kind of curious.
I'm talking just pH. I'm talking I'm not talking 21.
Okay.
I'm talking pH levels of the water that's going to be now conveyed into the resource area. I want to
Establish a
know.
baseline, so if there is a problem, you know what to measure against.
I want to know what the pH level is now before they start conveying, and then I'm going to want to see what the water is before it gets treated.
Understood.
Lessons learned.
Understood.
So, let me see, I think, these are all easy things, Mike. These should be, these are all a layup for you guys. That's it for the moment.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, guys.
First of all, for preliminary presentation, you did an excellent job, Mike. Because you did everything you said you were going to do at the pre-meeting, so, because I don't like curveballs.
I don't either, Mr. Chair.
Two questions. You said you're tearing down a building. I didn't see the dumping, the stockpiling. This building was built in the 60s. I guarantee you there's asbestos in there.
50s.
50s.
It's built in the 50s.
50s, late 50s, early 60s. So I'd like to know where the asbestos is going to be, because you do have a lot of wetlands, and there'll be asbestos dust, and I would imagine.
Talking about in the buildings or in the soil? You mean the buildings?
The building itself, because they're tearing down 3/4 of it. The other question you answered with the stormwater, and what was the other question? It'll come to me. I'll defer until I'll think of it. It'll come to me. I should have wrote it down. Sean?
So we know where the line is. That was an RDA. We've locked that in. Is there, it's not triggering NISA, but is it Endangered Species Act?
No, it's not mapped.
It's not mapped.
It's not mapped.
Was it
It was years ago.
Merrimack River, right?
It was.
Okay, but it's not any longer?
Our stuff's not mapped, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did remember. The other one was test pits on the site, and removal of the, you said the removal of the parking lot to wetland. I'd like a soil sample to make sure that the soil is clean. 208 would be nice, which it might be tough, because back in the 60s, they got away with a lot of stuff. If
What was
we're
the
gonna
first?
expose
What was the first part of your comment, Lou? I'm sorry, I was writing.
Test pits and the soil sample, where you're going to open up the open land to an open field. I want to make sure that the soil is clean.
Yeah, that'll go along with
Yeah.
the baseline testing.
Mr. Manzi said.
That's what I
complement
thought
each
Al
other.
was asking, and now I'm hearing it.
I think they'll complement each other, Joe.
Maybe more the developer from Texas, who sat there just listening carefully. I mean, you're not jumping into this thing recklessly. You know what that land is like, I would hope. I mean, you must have peppered the soil to know if there's any buried treasure out there or there is worse. I mean, the expectation is it's going to be cleaner than it is now when you guys are finished. That's our expectation. And particularly in areas that are being disturbed, we want to make sure that the soil beneath it is clean. And those areas that are going to become restoration and resource areas, we want to be positive that those are clean. Simple as that. And where those are specifically under pavement areas or under buildings or it doesn't matter to me. The expectation is those areas have got to be clean. And I think you want that too. All right.
Chuck?
No questions at this point.
Doug?
No questions, no.
So we gotta,
This is an exciting project too.
it is, I told you before, I have no issues with this project moving forward. I don't see any issues, major issues with the project. Just a lot to swallow in one,
Understood, Mr. Chair.
I know it took you a long time to put it together, so, and you know what you're doing, just,
It's just trying to figure out how to present a gazillion sheets efficiently was also took some time. So I appreciate that. No worries.
there's a lot on the table.
I will say on a non-conservation, and this does seem like the best use of this property that we've seen, a lot of proposals coming in front of us. This looks like what it was meant to be, so.
We're obviously
congratulations.
excited about this
You guys
project.
get it
Yeah.
through.
Important project.
All right, so now we need a date. You've got planning
Do
to
we
go
have
to?
do we have any abutters? I mean, shocked them,
No, I think that it's been the general consensus that people not the end of it, that they're all for this project. I haven't heard an iota of somebody that's opposed to it. That's why I want it to go
Yeah,
smooth.
shouldn't have said that, Lou.
No, but I'd like it to go smooth like as it has been.
And if folks have an interest in conservation-oriented topics, this hits them all. I mean, this is just a great opportunity for not only an important project for the town, but just the way that this site can be enhanced after all these years, so.
Exactly.
I think of the opposite of what Lou just said holds true here, though, is that I think the town's people have faith in the boards and commissions to do their job, and we represent them pretty well. So that's not to suggest that we give you guys any skating rights.
Stop patting on.
We don't give you guys
patting
any
yourself on the head.
skating rights just because there are no abutters here. We're gonna hold you to the standards and hold you to the.
That's only true as long as Joe's on the board.
Actually, there are probably several thousand abutters. We're the highest rating. We are the highest rated show on local cable in North Andover. We know that to be true.
Several years now.
Speaking of the
We know
show,
that,
I thought I
no
saw
one-
a little.
No one has
a little-
outrated us yet,
A
so.
little Pat Sajak van a white thing going on. Can you flip to the next?
And I do want to say I think Tim did a great job at that part of it. Thank you for helping me out. Tim.
No, I think everything's will go well. I mean, if the project would be an issue, there would be people here as you've seen in the past.
Of course, we will remain impartial through the process.
Yeah, of course we will. So, what is the next date that you're gonna need? Probably a month?
Well, I heard your opening comments for the other hearings about you have a very busy agenda in 2 weeks.
We want to make it productive, too. We don't want you
We
coming in
do.
and just,
Yeah.
But even, so let me give you some examples on some things that might be productive. We have to do some thinking on the type of analysis that you're looking at. That might be a nice topic to talk about in 2 weeks. You know, maybe it's not a heavy lift, but we need to get buy-in on what.
yeah, if
what
you
we're
need
talking about.
specifics on it, you can send an email to Amy, she can flip it to me.
Yeah.
Or you can email me directly, you know how. And if you, just with regard to what I'm asking for, if you're confused about what I'm asking for, I don't
Yeah.
think you are, but
Not that any of us need any more work, but I think this is probably the most important project that's faced this town in a long time. I think rather than trying to do the business at the table exclusively, I think we almost should form a subcommittee of a non-quorum to act as the point persons, to meet periodically, to be able to, flush these items out and give direction to the applicant. So when they come in, they at least have an inkling of idea of what it is we're looking for. Yeah, on much worse projects. But this one, it's very important that we make that happen. And I think, not that we always see eye to eye, but it might be productive that the dynamic of how the planning board looks at it and how we look at it sometimes might clash. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen in a public meeting, that we flush those issues out ahead of time.
I don't disagree with you, but the way, from where I sit, I let the science run the project. It's not subjective to me. It either is or it isn't.
I'm just talking pure, just administration of the permitting process and the logistics of it. I mean,
Yeah, I'm not talking.
before we dive into construction sequencing and erosion controls as part of this, we need to understand the global vision of what's being done, and then dive into how that's actually specifically being done, and understand the drainage. And from that, understand construction sequencing. I don't think you can take that all in the same jambalaya of a mix and try to digest it all. You're just going to get heartburn. I think you really methodically need to look at it element by element and put those elements to bed and move on. And I think that meetings like that ahead of time can help make that more efficient.
If the committee, I mean, you're a volunteer board, if your schedules allow, we would welcome that. It's an efficient way to review things and keep things moving. I'll defer to the board on that, but that's certainly something that would, of course, be of interest to us. I think it would help answer some of your questions more efficiently, so.
Would it be an issue to continue till October 9th? In the meantime, we'll pick a subcommittee.
I'm sorry, Lou.
Okay.
Okay. The 9th does not work.
9th does not work.
I'm sorry, I cut you off, but I'm sorry. I see value coming back in 2 weeks to at least give some updates on, there's a lot to talk about still. We don't have to do an hour presentation, but there's stuff we still need to be talking about in front of this commission, because the alternative is not coming back until October 23rd. That's a long time to pass. Now, the good thing is,
Okay.
is that okay to, we would respectfully request would be heard in the next meeting. We'll work with you on how much time you want to allot to us, Lou, but we would request.
I will not be at the next meeting. I'll be there.
Well,
I will not be there.
and he will not be there.
I am able to attend the 25th. I don't know if that helps.
Is Deb going to be here?
Huh?
Deb going to
As far as I know.
As far as we know, Deb will be here.
And I'll be here. Doug, you're going to be here. And maybe we get, I'm pushing for Jack. I think the 25th would be to address the issues that you have, that we brought up tonight.
Well, you can tell us how you're going to handle it.
Yeah, we may even have an update on what we've done with
You
Horsley.
may have an update, but you can at least tell us how you're going to handle what we're asking for.
Understood.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm in agreement with Joe to expedite your project. It wouldn't hurt to have a subcommittee meet with you or whoever.
I think it's a great idea.
And any loose ends of construction phasing and all that, this week, once it's approved, off you go.
Understood. That would be well received. We'd
You know,
appreciate
We
that.
did it on a couple of projects, and he's done it way before me. It does work smoothly, and naturally with Amy.
Yep.
Because she'll be our field representative, or Ben. And we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, the project is what it is, and he did a good job. So we're going to continue till the 25th.
Please.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, everybody. That was too bad. Yeah, I know, huh?
We're going to work around you, Mike.
Next one is an updated discussion on Style Street in, off of Boston. I want to give the commission a little oversight of this project.
We're going to try to find it first.
It's just a discussion item.
Is there anything in here on
There's
it?
a negative determination in the package.
We've already issued.
I'm looking.
Oh, yeah, this
Searching.
Gene Wilson, second.
Yep. I have these. Let me take this one.
This one? Okay.
Just to give you some feedback, it was about putting a farmer's road into the.
So this is Style Street culvert we're talking about now?
Yes,
All right.
yes. And,
Representative here.
and we did an order of conditions, and one of them was dry conditions and, or winter conditions. And we're having a little bit of dispute about what are dry conditions and what are wet conditions. So we're trying to give Mr. Willis a direction. If that's what we consider wet, then he'd have to file a modification to be allowed to put the pipe in now because the winter conditions are not conducive to him.
Well, they're not conducive to anybody.
No. And he's got a small machine. And it's not a big project. But the order conditions are what they are, so that's why Mr. Willis is here.
I realize I missed the last meeting, so I apologize, but
He wasn't
This was,
here.
no, this
This
is
is
just.
all-
No, this
Yeah,
is
this
not,
is no.
why is this back in front of us? I thought we disposed of this.
Well, the order conditions state dry conditions or wet
Frozen
conditions.
conditions for.
Or frozen
culvert.
conditions.
Dry
And-
frozen conditions.
And our field inspector went out there, and he considers it wet,
And we went out today.
all right?
And I have pictures
Mr.
from
Willis
today.
says it's as dry as it's gonna be,
And I believe him.
so that's where we're at. So, but we,
All right, so I think the intent was to do the work in order to minimize the potential of impact to the resource area, meaning no tracking of mud and, dry atmosphere and dry ground conditions. If you're still tracking and creating mud,
It's impossible to do the kind of work that he's proposing and not track something. It's impossible. We have to just condition it accordingly. It's not possible. It won't
well, we
be able
did
to-
condition it, that's what he's asking clarification on.
So-
Is this dry enough,
is it
or are
dry
we
enough?
talking
Is it
frozen?
wet? Did-
That's what he's asking.
There it is right there.
So this is from today.
That's
That's
today.
today?
That's today.
That's what?
It's wet. And there's,
And it hasn't rained. That should tell everybody it's not going to get any drier.
If I may say something about the conditions, doesn't say anything about a dry stream bed, doesn't say anything about no flow, doesn't say anything about even low flow. So I was out with Jen, it wasn't frozen, she said, call me in a dry time in August. It hadn't rained for 7 days, so I called asking for Jen, she wasn't there, so we came out and then it was, well, this isn't dry conditions. Well, it's not a dry stream bed, but it hadn't rained for 7 days, and I got a narrow window here. I'll try not to, I'm just trying to replace the pipe.
I mean, I agree.
so,
Let him replace the pipe.
okay.
It's not gonna get any drier.
Okay,
And the frozen
so-
condition is not necessarily gonna be any better. You gotta-
I mean, this is a,
The only reason why I had him come before the commission was because I felt that it wasn't my purvey to give an answer, or the administration to give them an answer where it is constituted, it's considered wet, but it's considered dry.
May I make a suggestion? Let our representative go out to the field and tell Mr. Willis what he has to do to replace it.
That's not our guy's responsibility.
I think they've been out there 3 times.
We told him he could, we
Well,
let him, first of all, we let him build the road, we let him seed the place 30 years ago. He's been coming in front of us for 30 or 40 years. We've basically told him he could operate his agribusiness out there. It's unreasonable now to tell him he can't fix the damn road. We're the ones that told him he could.
We debated that the last row. Let's put to bed. That's done.
But so
We're letting him do this.
he's got to get rid of that culvert, and he's got to, I mean, this was all presented the last time it was here.
I think that it revolves around the conditions, or was that it was dry conditions. Now, does that mean a dry stream bed? Does that mean no flow? Does that mean low flow? Or does that mean 7 days of no rain? What is dry conditions?
Listen,
I'm going back to my original statement. The idea was to do it on the most optimum of conditions.
Best time you
to
could.
minimize the impact.
I agree.
If you can prevent the impact and keep the containment between erosion controls, he's met the burden. So, that was the intent.
Can you do that?
I thought I could have
If
done
you
it.
can't, can you hire somebody that can?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to have the erosion controls. It's going to be a day, and we're going to go and we're going to put in a 10-foot piece of pipe, and Kenny Ray's going to be.
It's going to be, the burden's going to be on you
Well, but I got to be able to start.
That's why I left it to you guys, because I didn't want to get in the middle of the administration and the commission, because the order conditions say wet or
I mean,
dry, or winter.
Okay, so I had Ben watch the meeting, okay? And so the condition was placed dry or frozen. Didn't, I mean, so we took it as dry, that's obviously dry. It was less dry when Ben went out. And I'm not saying that, I recommended that Mr. Willis come in for a formal modification to that condition. He didn't want to do that, he wanted to
That's
come in.
$200 and next month.
So,
And
but
I have to do it in dry
I think my point
time.
being is that, so now we have wet conditions, how do, you know, what
Well, let me just.
what additional conditions the commission would want to see to condition that work in a more wet condition?
Well, let me just offer a real quick
That's all.
opinion here. It's as dry as it's going to get this season, okay? I'm a guy that goes out and cuts hay, and I can go in any field, anywhere, anytime right now, and my tires don't get wet. And that hasn't been able, I haven't been able to do that all summer. So it's as dry as it's going to get. In November, we know statistically, November's the wettest month of the year.
Okay.
So we're heading towards,
Yep.
so if we don't let him get it done now, it's going to be substantially undoable in November. So then you're in frozen conditions, which I don't
Which
know.
isn't any bargain either.
Is no bargain. So,
All right, well,
I mean, we just have to tell him pre-construction, what he has to do pre-construction to get it ready.
I've already had that, and that was that different sock across the stream and everything. I had met with Jen out there trying to do it under frozen conditions, and then I met, is his name Brian? Or
Ben.
Ben, I met Ben, and he said that I needed to put that sock across the thread of the river, and I said, okay, it's 7 days, I'm hoping I'm going to be able to put this pipe in tomorrow. And it was 2 weeks later here, and it's rained since, and I don't know if the commission cares, but the person that maintains my fields has told me that he's not going to cross that culvert. He thought it was going to be already replaced, and he said next year he won't mow my fields if he has to cross that culvert.
Trying to help you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Trying to help you. Is there any consensus as to why?
Yeah, I'm sticking to my really good,
Go-
no impact. And if that sock does it, that's no impact.
You're going to have stuff available in your truck at the time in case something goes wrong. You're going to have to plan for the worst. That's what you have to do.
I would say this is dry conditions. These are dry
You can-
conditions. Not in the dry, but this is dry climatic conditions.
These
So
are, I
the
mean,
commission's saying you could do it. When you gonna do it?
Me and Al. I'm not-
Well, whatever. I'm sure they will. You notify the staff so somebody can be out there when you do it.
right,
Okay, so that leaves out the weekends. If I have a dry weekend,
absolutely.
that can't
Well,
happen.
I mean,
She
Okay.
doesn't do weekends. It does Ben.
so, when's the soonest that somebody could go? When,
First of the week,
Well, for probably, depending on the weather, it'd be the first of next week.
supposed to be good weather next week.
it's,
Isolated showers.
So if the conditions are like this
Isolated
Monday,
showers, that's
if the conditions are like this Monday, I could do the work Tuesday.
conditions are going to be favorable Monday through Friday according to this app.
I'm ready to go. So if the conditions are like this Monday, I meet Ben out there?
or myself.
Oh, okay. And if it is,
So why don't you-
I'll do it Tuesday?
Why don't you get ready, to call the staff on Monday morning? Why don't you start preparing it that way? And have extra erosion controls on hand, have extra stuff in case something goes wrong. It's just up to you to contain it,
Yeah.
all right? Don't come back with an oops.
Oh, well.
Then
Right.
we'll look bad here, and that'll be bad for you.
Yep.
All right.
So can we just go over what the project as
Just-
described
I'm
in
just
the
gonna
negative
see-
determination?
Okay,
You all set?
Oh, I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
think, I just think we didn't, for what we wanted, we didn't necessarily word that condition as well as we should. And I don't think Ben or anybody did anything wrong, because that certainly is not a dry condition. So I
Thank
think
you.
the situation that we're in is largely on our own writing.
okay.
Go on through the project, get it done with.
Okay. So now we get Doug's input.
Thank you, Doug.
So the
All right, Amy, go
project,
ahead.
the project entails replacement of an existing culvert with a 24-inch diameter pipe to be embedded 6 inches with a natural substrate. The new pipe will be no more than 10 feet in length with 3-foot flared ends
On each side.
to keep all stone out of the stream bed from the top of the roadway.
That stuff's already out there.
That's what we said.
That's
We
fine.
just want to, we're just
All right,
making sure,
so-
Gene.
So Monday morning, you're gonna get it set up for Monday. We're gonna call the office.
Okay.
One of them will be out to watch,
Okay.
Yep.
and we'll put this thing to bed.
Great, thank you.
All right.
You'll have it done by Tuesday morning.
So I'll call you Monday? Thank you.
Thanks, Gene.
All right.
All right, 242-1636, extension request.
We're-
Recommend issuing the extension for this project.
So moved. Is he entitled to one?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
last one,
Okay.
last
Last
one.
one.
That's what extension
I
request.
knew
They're
that.
never
Gotcha.
gonna get an as, they're never gonna get an as-built.
Do you need a motion or is it done?
Motion, we have a motion and we need a,
Second.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
Okay, extended.
Next one is a modification request, Zero Grade Pond, 224 French Farm,
DPW
DPW.
DPW.
received.
So apologies that this material wasn't in your packets. We've done that, but it's on your desks.
Which one is, I remember this one.
Yeah.
I don't, can I have one of those, Mike?
Well, go ahead.
I don't have one. Thank you. A whole bunch here.
You putting this in, Mike? Busy night for you, huh?
Yeah, I'm already tapped.
Jesus Christ.
I'm in hearing shape with you guys. All right,
I didn't know you needed the work.
I'm not sure I do. Okay. Shall I start, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Okay. So this is a request to modify the order of conditions that the commission issued a couple of years ago now to the Department of Public Works. And as the commission may recall, at the end of French Farm Road, there is existing North Andover easement, existing sewer line that has some capacity issues. DPW obtained an order of conditions to replace the section of pipe that is shown in yellow on that graphic that's in front of you right now on the screen. Subsequent to that permit being issued and subsequent to more additional analysis being conducted by the DPW, they realized that a second segment of pipe also needed to be modified, and that's what's described in the submittal to the commission tonight. Nothing has changed from the project with regards to the access route, sediment and erosion control measures, construction methodology, things of that nature. Wetland impacts are essentially the same. Some of the trenching is within the floodplain, as was the original, but the area, of course, is restored to its pre-existing condition. Have I confused you with?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry. So that's really, I'll be brief. So they're essentially asking to modify the order of conditions to include this additional segment of work.
So it's 120 feet additional,
Thank you, Amy.
right?
Right, that's all described in the cover letter.
Yep.
This one's thicker. Who likes this one? Good, you all set? I'm just handing out the other ones.
That's it, Mr. Chair.
We get decision on that too?
So I guess the only question I would have is, since we have additional work, would the bond need to be increased? It's 10,000 right now, as is.
Gotcha. Good question.
Is the other work finished?
Hasn't started
They
yet.
haven't started yet.
No.
Who's doing the work?
I don't know who they hired for a contractor.
Listen,
It's going to be a contractor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, God,
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a,
Just wanted to ask.
Is this a cut and cover project?
Yeah.
Or are they lining it?
cut and cover.
it's one of the Italian contractors that works in town.
Gotcha,
I
okay.
forget who it is, though.
Okay, so we currently have $10,000 bond?
And this site's, this is almost double now.
This will, would you say this will
Almost.
double the impacts?
There's a table included,
Do you have a table?
yeah, on page 3. Yeah, almost doubles it now.
Yeah,
So,
In total,
in total.
but you'll leapfrog your way through. It's not all open all at once. You open up 40 feet of trench, you lay new pipe,
Right.
you backfill it, compact it, and move on and do the next 40 feet, and
Correct.
so on and so forth. What is going to be sequential and additive, I should say, is till the site gets stabilized, you're revegetated.
Yes.
So there's your exposure, not so much the doubling of the pipe work.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think Amy's suggestion of doubling the bond, I don't have a problem with that. Take it to $20,000. It's a performance
And
bond.
it's all
after
in
all.
resource, right?
It's
No, well,
It's in
yeah,
bordering land subject to
and
flood.
buffer
It's in
zone.
BLSF.
Buffer zone.
None of it's
bordering.
actually in the,
It's not in the wetlands, it's in floodplain and buffer zone.
Well, floodplain and BLSF, it's actually worse.
okay.
Yeah.
It's actually worse.
Well, BLSF, but it's not in
They're
the
not
Board of
changing
Vegetative
grades.
Wetland.
No, it's not,
Right.
right. It's in the floodplain resource area, it's not in other types of resource areas.
I think, I mean, I understand doubling is a simple way to do it, but I think that's overkill, in my
may not
opinion, but
make
I'm not
sense.
gonna parse it down to 7,500, so just leave it alone. I agree with you guys.
No questions? Questions, type questions? All right, so as far as the project is not an issue, we're just going to increase the bond.
So the recommendation is to approve the modification and increase the bond from $10,000 to $20,000. So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, next one is 633 Turnpike Street, Andover Pest Control. This is an enforcement order.
Good evening, Maureen Harold, North Environmental Services. Here with me tonight is Mike Riley. He received an enforcement order on July 24th for cutting of trees in front of the property. So this is one of the small ranch houses that's located across the street from the Easton Shed Company, right on Route 114. There was some overhanging branches over the house, and he had removed these trees within the buffer zone, hence the enforcement order. So as part of a suggestion of the enforcement order, it was suggested that 3 trees get planted. So we're proposing to plant 3 magnolia trees within the 25-foot buffer zone.
Maybe 4.
Maybe 4.
Kind of staggered.
Now, the wetlands are flagged out on the property. That was one of the requirements. Promptly did that once the enforcement order was issued.
Ben and I visited after the flagging, and we found the flagging to be reasonable, and we expected it to creep towards 114, which it did.
Magnolia is the right species?
Sugar Bay, they're native.
You're not native, right?
The Sweet Bay
Sweet Bay
are...
magnolia?
Yes, they
Sweet
are
Bay
native. It was just the preferred tree. So,
As long as they're native, I was thinking something more ornamental. I'm all set.
You all set with the plan?
Yeah. I just, would recommend coordination with final exact location with us, me and Ben, installing trees no later than September 30th. I don't know,
Yeah, whatever you want in that EO, just
and then
since
inspect.
you're the one that has to go out and
Inspect
enforce.
after installation, and then make sure they survive. And replace if they die.
that's not a problem, and in fact, there's going to be some improvement done to the property, so we'll be back in front of you within a few months anyhow, so.
Like I said before, like if there's any questions as to what you're doing out there, go over there. A lot cheaper. Not to pick on you, Maureen. But I mean, that's why when I had spoken to you earlier, and I said, asking that's what we have, that's what we make the big bucks for. Her and Ben come out there and tell you what you can do, what you can't do. And then if you want, then hire Maureen and get a surveyed plan. If you want, I don't know what your plans are for the property, that's up to you. But include staff, don't just go ahead and include Maureen. Don't just do things because won't go well. Sean?
Are we all set on markers out there? Any need for markers?
There will be. I was thinking that maybe it would be best to kind of look at that once we have a site plan to look at.
So we just received a plan from Mashonda. This is an existing conditions plan. I can give this to you, Amy.
Okay.
For your file, but as I mentioned, we'll be back in front of the commission for the future work that we'll be proposing, so. I mean, we're happy to do the markers now or wait.
So you will be coming in with a different plan for additional work and...
Additional work within the
Dealing with
buffer
all
zone.
Beyond
markers.
the scope of the enforcement.
That's good
That's
faith,
correct.
but we don't necessarily know if they actually file
Yeah,
it.
that's good.
See,
No, I get it.
ideally, as you should have done in NRAD, Maureen would have went out, did the wetlands, and then you can go forward with your project, whatever you want to do with it. You're kind of like putting a cart before the horse, but that's okay.
So we can handle it, yeah.
We can handle
We can
that.
handle it. We can hit the curveball.
So, if the commission wants to, have the markers with the enforcement order,
No, I think the idea, since I had brought it up, I think waiting until later on and seeing if markers or a barrier or something else
Yeah.
might be most appropriate.
and I think with Mr. Riley's proposed use, there's probably a really good opportunity to, swallow back a lot of the lawn, and maybe even all of the 25 foot. I don't know, we'll see.
I think so.
See, for the moment, you just want to get the EO issued, right,
Yeah.
for right now?
Yeah.
Any additions to the EO?
Not for me.
Doug, any questions?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks. Okay, all
All we
right,
have left is
okay, just
125
updates.
Sherwood. Oh,
Okay,
excuse
so
me,
one-
I'm way ahead of myself.
That's all right. So 350 Forest,
Oh, we have Forest Street, 350 Forest Street.
Miss Logan attempted to do some removal, disturbed a yellow jacket nest, got stung multiple times. I would just recommend allowing them to maybe wait till November. I mean, not to drag it out, but feel bad.
Okay.
And Jamie wouldn't go out there and kill the yellow jacket, so.
I mean, thankfully she wasn't allergic and didn't go to anaphylactic shock out there.
She just wants additional time?
Yeah, I mean,
Granted.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
All set.
Okay.
Get a release.
All set.
We want evidence of the yellow jackets. We want evidence
Do you need a
of the
motion for
yellow
that?
jackets, don't you?
No, I'm feeling the
Sure, yeah.
I move that we grant Mrs. Logan additional time, whatever's required.
Second.
All right.
All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
I'd say to November 30th. would be
Okay.
Yeah,
certain.
because
All
we like
right.
to give.
November 30th.
We don't want to give open-ended.
Yep,
All right.
Yep, yep.
120, next one is 456 Summer Street.
Okay, so
Can-
they're going to be submitting a notice of intent for a proposed garage and probably some replanting of the trees that were removed. The surveyor went ahead and went on vacation, and so they weren't able to submit for tonight, but perhaps it might be better for the October 10th.
Doug? Amy,
October 9th.
I'm sorry, 9th.
October 9th.
just refresh my memory. This is the one that we thought that she wants to put a garage.
A
but she
garage.
can't.
Right.
But you don't think,
I haven't seen the plan yet, but
but you said there's no room, I thought.
probably not. Maybe they're putting it somewhere else.
Okay, so we need to check the date, we think.
We're not approving it, we're just changing the date, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Right, right.
That's all we are doing.
That's right.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Next one is 125
Okay.
Sherwood Drive.
So this was moving the fence out of the no disturb zone, and I was directed to go out with Ben and do some measurements and direct her exactly how many feet and blah, blah. So we weren't able to get out there until late 2 weeks ago. So she's working on it. She has her contractor working on it right now, but she's like, I'm not going to be done for the 11th. So just a continuance to the 25th,
2 more
and
weeks.
Ben and I will be out there again to verify.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Opposed, that's unanimous.
Okay.
And
And then
last but not
12.
least is
The project was mentioned 5 times
242,
today without
1692.
mentioning your name.
continue
Yeah.
to be determined.
Right.
So
I don't know.
what's wrong with the 25th?
Well,
He's going to be here now, he said.
I
You're
can be-
gonna-
I will not be here.
Is
So-
October 9th better for you?
It's certainly, I don't have a calendar in front of me, but it's certainly better than the 25th, because I know I'll be
Yeah, and
here that
I
day.
want Joe here too.
9th is better.
9th,
9th works for me.
9th works.
okay, because you guys will be here. Okay. All right,
I have a hearing.
all right.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay.
Well, I can, I'll move it. You can't move it.
I'm
He was
asking for a
requesting a
motion.
motion.
Privilege motion.
He was requesting a motion.
Yeah.
For adjournment.
You have your motion, sir.
Second it?
Second.
It's Joe.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that's unanimous. Okay, kill the camera.
We stand adjourned.